Hey, it's Tuesday. How you doing today? It's not as cold out today as it was yesterday. Hey, have you ever done this with a mirror? You like that? You ever done this where you kind of put the mirror up, and if you've got real good eyes, you can kind of see how the image just gets reflected over and over and over and over again? Pretty crazy, isn't it? I want to talk with you about something related to mirrors and reflections today. So that's why I wanted to bring the mirror and do this, and I'll bring it back later. But I want to talk with you today about something that's very related to mirrors. Let me share a passage of scripture from the Old Testament, from the book of Malachi. You ever heard of the book of Malachi? It's at the end of the Old Testament. If you go through the end, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, and then we go to the New Testament is the next book, Matthew. And Malachi is also the name of one of Sharon and my grandsons. So anyway, in the book of Malachi, chapter 3 and verses 2 to 3, it says this: "But who will be able to endure it when he comes? Who will be able to stand and face him when he appears? For he will be like a blazing fire that refines metal, or like a strong soap that bleaches clothes. He will sit like a refiner of silver, burning away the dross." I want to talk with you about refining and God being the refiner, who in this passage is the refiner of silver, burning away the dross. Let me tell you about this woman. She was curious about the process of purifying silver, so she called a silversmith and made an appointment to watch him work. She didn't mention anything about the reason for her interest beyond her curiosity about the process of refining silver. Well, as she watched the silversmith, he held a piece of silver over the fire and let it heat up. He explained that in refining silver, you need to hold the silver in the middle of the fire where the flames were the hottest, as to burn away all of the impurities. The woman thought about God holding us in such a hot spot. And then she thought again about the verse that says he sits as a refiner or purifier of silver. Well, she asked the silversmith if it was true that he had to sit there in front of the fire the whole time the silver was being refined. The man answered that yes, he not only had to sit there holding the silver, but he had to keep his eye on the silver the entire time it was in the fire. If the silver was left a moment too long in the flames, it would be destroyed. The woman was silent for a moment, and then she asked the blacksmith, "How do you know when the silver is fully refined?" He smiled at her and answered, "Oh, that's easy. When I can see my image in it." Well, I want to talk with you a little bit about that refining work that God does, because he does it in all of our lives. There's a passage in the New Testament that's talking about our eternal inheritance, our future, our future established hope of Christ returning and taking us with him forever to be in the eternal paradise of heaven. 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7 say, "In this you greatly rejoice, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold which is perishable, even though tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ." See, God subjects us to refining at times in our lives, or he allows us to go through the refining process. And I want to remind you or let you know about some of the things that are true about the refining process. The fact is that refining burns away impurities. You see, the more foreign substances that are in silver or gold or any precious metal, the less valuable that metal is. But also, the more likely it is that that metal will be corrupted. And that's like us in our relationship with God. His desire is that our lives would be pure. So there are times when God allows us to go through trials, struggles, hardships, sometimes some that are very, very extreme, in order to burn away those things that would threaten to corrupt us and keep us from being pure before him. So remember, the next time you're in the middle of a severe struggle, that sometimes that's what God allows in order to burn away the things that will only damage us and keep us from being pure before him. It is his work in our life. A second thing to remember is that refining might mean something very extreme. Remember that the refiner of the metal must hold the metal in the middle of the flames where the fire is the hottest. See, it's likely that there will be times in each of our lives when God allows us to enter a fiery trial that is very, very intense. Just as the refiner of gold or silver has to subject the metal to the hottest part of the flame, so we sometimes have to endure the toughest, most difficult of adversities or sufferings in order to truly rid our hearts of the most destructive of enemies. Our spiritual purity is so valuable and precious that it will require the most severe cleaning process at some points in our lives. But when those times of purifying are being applied to our life, remember what the refiner said. She asked the silversmith if it was true that he had to sit there in front of the fire the whole time the silver was being refined. The man answered that, yes, he not only had to sit there holding the silver, but he had to keep his eye on the silver the entire time it was in the fire. When you are going through times of fire, times when God is purifying you, always remember that he is watching you the entire time. Sorry, this gets a little bit hard for me to keep from crying. Remember the entire time that God is keeping his eye on us every moment and will never at any time take his eye off of you. And he will never allow us to go through the fire when he is not watching us. Every single moment, he will never take his eye off of us when we are in trials. If you want to read a section of scripture that explains this incredible way that God is always watching and supervising our lives, I encourage you to read my absolute favorite passage in all of the Old Testament. It is Psalms 139. Read that chapter. It explains how intimately God watches over and is always keeping his eye on us. In verse 5 of that chapter, it says, "You have enclosed me behind and before and laid your hand upon me." And a couple verses later, in verses 7 to 10, it says, the psalmist says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol or hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me." Now, whenever you are going through the most difficult trial of your life, you can be absolutely sure that God is keeping his eye on you. He knows exactly when to remove you from the flame. He will never allow you to be in the difficulty or trial any longer than is necessary. Now, the last point I want to make is this. God is developing his image in us. Remember the mirror? Where are we? There we go. Remember that God is developing his image, his reflection in us. Remember what the story said. She asked the blacksmith, "How do you know when the silver is fully refined?" And he says he smiled at her and answered, "That's easy. When I can see my image in it." See, God is in the process of creating his image in us. That's his purpose, that we would be able to be a representation of him, a reflection of him to others. He wants others to be able to see his image in our life. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, it says, "But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit." Hey, God is in the process of making us into his image, a reflection of him, so that the people we interact with and talk with and spend time with can see his image through us. So take heart when you're going through something that is very, very difficult. Perhaps God is in the process of refining you, of making you pure, and turning you into a reflection of him. It can be hard. It can be difficult. Sometimes God's refining touch in our life, his refining process, his purifying in our life can be very extreme in our personal situation. It can take us through situations, circumstances, and hardships that we may not feel like we can make it through. But God is watching us every step of the way, every moment, every second. And he will not allow us to be in the fire longer than we need. You can count on him. You can trust that, because he wants to turn us into a reflection of him. I hope that's encouraging to you today. I hope it's helpful. It's a very strong reminder to me. There have been times in my life when I've gone through the fire, and it's not pleasant. It's not easy, but knowing that God is watching me at every moment, and he knows exactly when to remove me so that I can be a better reflection of him, is very, very encouraging to me. So, if you're struggling today with our current situation, or if there's something else you're going through, something else that God has allowed into your life, trust him. Lean upon him. Have confidence in him. Cry out to him. I've told you about that. We need to be able to cry out to him. Do so. Let him know how you're feeling and how hard it is, and he will be with you. And if you need someone to pray with you or pray for you, please let us know. Let me know, or let one of the pastors know, or one of the youth leaders know, so we can be praying for you and with you. And I tell you every day, remember that you are deeply loved. Remember that you are missed more than you could imagine. And remember that you're being prayed for each and every day. Have a great Tuesday, and come back again tomorrow, and we'll talk some more, okay? Take care. God bless you.